Auckland's an incredible city, a young city that's kind of growing up, an adolescent in effect, and I have the proud privilege to be the design champion for Auckland. My role is to lead that design-led vision and to ensure that it's implemented. And so over the last 10 years or so, we've seen remarkable changes in Auckland. It's a city that's really kind of finding its mojo in effect. You know, we're building a new waterfront, a new art gallery, was actually voted the world's best building in 2013. So the city is changing and it's been a remarkable time to be here. The panel has been here at a pivotal time too, and working with the private sector, we've lifted the game in terms of development quality. And so as that quality lifts, so does people's demand for better design. And so that design champion role is not just an internal role, it's also an external role. The design-led city strategy has many, many components to that. One of the critical pieces of that is the design review component. We have two programs working in Auckland. One is a design review panel which manages the private development, and one is a design review panel of all projects which the council delivers. So if we want to drive a design-led city vision, we need to make sure that we meet and celebrate and also lead by example. The Auckland Urban Design Panel has been established in Auckland by the Property Council of New Zealand in partnership with the council, and it's fundamentally important to ensure that we have the private sector on board to drive that design agenda through the more commercial ranks. Because in the beginning it would just be seen as some sort of bureaucratic hurdle where the council is just putting ourselves in the face of the private development opportunities. And so having the Property Council of New Zealand, for instance, on board as one of the founding partners to the programme has been critical.
So I'm the Auckland Urban Design Programme Leader, and I manage the Auckland Urban Design Panel. I've been in this role for 2.5 years. It's been newly created, and it's an exciting role. It's a real honour to be part of it. My background is a landscape architect and urban designer, so I'm able to bring that professional expertise into the management and the administration of the panel. So the Auckland Urban Design Panel has a governance structure, and we've got a terms of reference. Our members come from the professional institutes, and they include planning, architecture, landscape architecture, the Maori Design Network and urban designers. There's 40 panel members and we have 6 advisors, and they're in the fields of sustainability, heritage and also in universal design. So when we have a panel meeting, we draw together 4 representatives to sit on the panel, and these people, depending on the project that we're reviewing, we bring in the expertise to provide the review. The panel's funded through the long-term plan process, which Auckland Council is part of, and that covers for paying for panel member time at an hourly rate, and also covering for my salary time for managing the panel process. It has been a free service that we've offered over the last 10 years. However, the development industry is now getting so engaged in panel that we're seeing an increase in reviews and requests, so we're looking to start to charge for that service. So panel members are selected through a nomination process, and that's through the various institutes. And 2 years ago we went through a refresh process, and we actually increased the number of landscape architects and actually the representation of more women on the panel, and bringing in 2 women panel chairs as well. So we've got a greater balance of professionals across the panel membership, and that has been really successful. So when projects are selected to come to panel, we get our urban designers to work with us to choose the panel members who are going to be suitable for the review process. And as part of that, sometimes we do find that certain panel members have got a conflict of interest. This does occur. New Zealand, and particularly Auckland, is a small market. There are limited professionals out there. So what we do, we draw on expertise from the small sole traders, but also larger practices, and also through the university and education sector. So we generally always find we've got somebody who's got the skills, that there is no conflict. So as part of the main Auckland Urban Design Panel, we have sub-panels which sit underneath that umbrella, and sub-panels look at specific areas like housing, for example. So Hobsonville has gone through a sub-panel process, and this is effectively a really good, efficient process where designers and developers all come together and they get embedded into a specific geographic area. A key benefit of the process is that it's transparent, and developers like that. They like to know where they stand, they like to know something's consistent, and it is essentially a peer-to-peer review process.
I guess the key lessons and successes have come from the experimental nature of the panel when we set it up back in 2003. One of the first features was the breadth of membership, the fact that we have always had architects, landscape architects, and significantly members of the property development industry represented on the panel. And not long after the panel began, we also had members of the planning profession join the panel. So that's been something which has resulted in multidisciplinary conversations, and those conversations have typically been very successful. A second aspect of the panel would be the way in which members are selected. Each of the professional bodies nominates their own members to serve on the panel. That's worked extraordinarily well. I think a third lesson we've learnt, which is also another somewhat experimental aspect, is the way in which we develop panel recommendations. That's actually done during the panel meeting, and all of the panel members are involved in that process. It takes a little bit of time, it requires some careful steering by the panel chair, but the result is that all of the panel members buy in fully to the panel recommendations. It's always interesting to look at the way in which overseas panels operate. I've been able to sit in on some of the CABE design reviews and also the work of the Vancouver panel, and certainly some of the procedures that they followed have been really helpful for us, and the CABE guidance on this matter was something that was of great assistance to us. But I think also panels need to take account of local conditions. I was impressed in the Vancouver situation that the panel was operating in a climate of quite mature urban design work and urban design assessment, and that they were able to be fairly summative in their design evaluations. In our situation, we've had to have a much more formative kind of role in giving advice, particularly in the early years when expertise in urban design in this city, in Auckland, was certainly quite limited. The Farrells review proposes to replace the term design review with the term place review. And I guess that's a pretty interesting question. I think we need to understand why the Farrells review has proposed that, what the situation seems to be in Britain that's prompted this, and whether that situation exists in our country. My understanding from reading the Farrells report is that design review has become largely the review of buildings, and that quite rightly the Farrells review is asking for design review to be more broadly based, to include areas of landscape and urban design and other areas as well. And I think that's a really good call. In New Zealand, our situation is rather different. We have never used the term design review panel. We've been fortunate to use the term urban design and urban design review, urban design panels. And when we use that term, it's widely understood that urban design includes more than just buildings, and that other professions than architecture have a place at the urban design review table. So from the outset, as I've suggested previously, we have landscape architects, we have planners, and in our case significantly members of the development industry taking part in our own urban design review processes. I think the future for urban design review in Auckland is very good. I think it's now accepted as a practice which is important in the evolution of important built environment projects. I think we have an opportunity to become somewhat more summative rather than formative in our assessments, and by that I mean that the urban design panel can be less concerned with providing advice and more with passing some kind of judgment on the quality of urban design work. I also think we'll see other ways of operating the urban design panel, specifically geared to some of the larger projects that are going on. So I think the future for urban design review in Auckland is very good.
From a developer's perspective, we wanted to make sure that we had a better built environment and that we actually knew what was being built beside our assets. We were actually getting architecture and urban design that wasn't really where we wanted to be. The urban design panel changed the way that we're actually looking at planning and the controls of planning, because it actually brought into play design assessment criteria, which we hadn't really had a lot of in the city. And now we were actually able to assess projects on how they fit into the built environment. So the formation of the urban design panel was really a coming together of the different professional bodies, such as the Property Council, the Institute of Architects and the Planning, And it allowed us to come together to look at how we were going to process applications for the built environment. Initially there was probably some resistance by the community to bring applications in front of the panel because you're in a statutory process. And when it was being viewed as part of a formal process, the engagement wasn't as strong. When we pulled it forward and we went pre-lodgement, what it added was a lot of benefit to the developer to get certainty as to the support that that development would actually add. So it allowed the developer to go forward with a lot more confidence in the scheme that they were putting forward, would actually gain support from the council in the regulatory capacity as well. We're really fortunate in Auckland that we've got a fantastic city, and we were building something that wasn't really up to keeping with the natural environment that we've got. So the Urban Design Panel has actually added to that. I see it very positively for the future of the city and from the development community again, because we're getting consistency of good quality urban design. The public realm, the individual private developments, and also the public buildings that we are now achieving are substantially better than what we were achieving pre this, because we've now got a different assessment criteria of what makes a good project. Having a body that gives some certainty around whether a design is going to be acceptable moving forward is just vital, because it allows the developer to know that what their product is going to be is actually going to be accepted by the regulatory side as well.
One of the greatest virtues, one of the greatest strengths in human existence is the sense of unity. And so therefore, as a united city, we've really reached out as a council, myself as the mayor, to our business community, our partnerships, the professional community, those who are the architects, the urban designers, who are working very closely in with the private sector and investing in much of the city and landscape that's been built. And we're working in close collaboration, certainly through the Urban Design Panel, but in all the work that we do. Obviously, as a city, we spend a lot of money in the public domain in helping regeneration and seed investment from the private sector, whether it's with our transport spend or otherwise. And so as the city goes forward and continues this extraordinary transformation, which I think has a gestation period, like most great cities when they go through transformations, 15 to 20 years is a normal period of significant, great change and regeneration, and we will do that over the next 10 to 15 years. And Auckland will reface itself to the globe and reface itself to the community and the people who have lived here through all those generations. And again, at the heart of that will be a very, very strong desire to deliver out a city that is a great place to live in and that is beautifully reshaped against the backdrop of very, very strong appreciation and understanding of what great urban design can do to make great livable cities.